The year is 2010 and Tencent stands at the absolute peak of its influence. QQ dominates the Chinese internet with hundreds of millions of active users, and for nearly a decade it has defined how people communicate online. Offices, internet cafes, schools and homes all rely on the same platform, and inside the company there is a deep belief that this position cannot be challenged. The empire feels permanent, stable and untouchable, but outside China a quiet shift is taking place. Mobile phones are no longer accessories, they are becoming the primary gateway to the internet. New messaging apps are not competing on features or branding, they are competing on behavior. They remove friction, remove costs and remove effort. One of them, Kik, reaches 1 million users in just 2 weeks, and while this number looks small compared to QQ, it signals something far more dangerous: a change in habit. Late at night in a Guangzhou office, an engineer named Alan Zhong studies this trend. Unlike many executives, he does not look at market share, he looks at how people act. Zhong understands that technology does not collapse when it is defeated, it collapses when it becomes irrelevant. Desktop messaging is not dying because it is worse, it is dying because it no longer fits into people's lives. Zhong sees the future clearly. People will not sit down to communicate, they will do it while walking, waiting, commuting and living. Their phones will not be tools, they will be extensions of daily behavior. QQ was built for a world of keyboards and screens, but that world is shrinking rapidly. If Tencent does nothing, the decline will not be slow. Users will not migrate gradually, they will leave all at once, and once they do, they will never come back. Zhong writes a short message to Tencent founder Pony Ma. There are no numbers, no slides, no forecasts, only a warning. Mobile internet has arrived and hesitation will be fatal. Pony Ma reads the message and replies with 4 characters: start immediately. And with that, Tencent does not begin a project, it begins a race for survival. Inside Tencent, Pony Ma's order spreads fast, but it does not move in a straight line. In a company this large, innovation does not emerge from one direction, it explodes into many. Teams in Shenzhen, Guangzhou and Chengdu are told to build a mobile messenger. No one is officially competing yet, everyone knows only one product will survive. This is not creativity driven by vision, it is pressure driven by fear. Most teams follow the same logic. They attempt to shrink QQ into a mobile screen. They preserve usernames, menus, friend lists, and complex interfaces, as the assumption is that users want the same experience, only smaller. Alan Zhong chooses a different path. He believes the future does not reward familiarity, it rewards simplicity. Zhong strips everything down: no usernames, no profiles, no decorative features, only phone numbers, instant notifications, and voice messages. Communication should feel natural, not technical. Many ask the same question: why do we need this when QQ already exists inside Tencent? Executives grow impatient. Competing internal teams report stronger early metrics, and for a brief moment, where Shen looks like a failed experiment that will soon be shut down, but then a single feature changes the trajectory. Voice messaging in a country with countless dialects and millions of users who type slowly, speaking feels effortless. Messages sound personal, emotional, and human. Weixin is no longer just a tool, it becomes a presence. Growth accelerates not through advertising but through intimacy. Families use it, friend groups rely on it, factory workers and students adopt it organically. Tencent begins to see a dangerous signal. Users are not only joining, they are staying. Session times increase, daily usage rises, and emotional attachment deepens. By the end of 2011, Tencent makes a decisive move. All competing mobile messaging projects are quietly cancelled. Zhang's product survives. It is rebranded for global audiences and given a new name, WeChat. But survival creates a new problem. Messaging apps are easy to replace. And Zhong knows that unless WeChat evolves, it will eventually be abandoned, just like the others. WeChat grows faster than anyone inside Tencent expected, but Alan Zhong is not satisfied. Growth alone means nothing in the long term. Messaging apps are fragile, users can switch overnight if something better appears. Zhong understands that WeChat must become more than a place to talk, it must become a place to live. The first step is money. In 2013, Tencent launches WeChat Pay. The idea is simple: allow users to send and receive money as easily as sending a message, but the reality is difficult. Alibaba, as Alipay already dominates digital payments, merchants are hesitant. Consumers are comfortable with what they know. For a moment it seems like WeChat Pay might remain a secondary feature. Then Tencent turns culture into strategy. During Chinese New Year, WeChat introduces digital red envelopes, a modern version of a traditional ritual. Friends and families send small amounts of money through the app purely for fun. Millions of users connect their bank accounts not to shop but to participate. Overnight payments become normal, cash begins to disappear from daily life. With payments embedded, WeChat expands again. Mini programs are introduced, allowing businesses and services to operate entirely inside the app. Users order food, book doctor appointments, pay utilities, call taxis, and manage subscriptions without downloading anything new. WeChat quietly bypasses the entire App Store economy at this point. WeChat is no longer software, it is infrastructure. Businesses cannot operate without it, and local governments begin integrating services directly into the platform. Identity verification licenses and public services all move inside the same interface. By the late 2010s, WeChat controls communication, finance, mobility, entertainment, and access. The app does not feel heavy or authoritarian. It feels convenient, helpful, and efficient. That is precisely what makes it powerful. Control does not arrive through force. It arrives through habit. As users rely on WeChat for everything, the cost of leaving becomes impossible. To delete the app would mean disconnecting from society itself, and when a system reaches that level, it no longer needs competition. Outside China, WeChat is often misunderstood. It is described as a super app, a cultural exception, or a product that only works because of local conditions. But this explanation avoids the uncomfortable truth: WeChat is not powerful because it is Chinese. It is powerful because it is efficient. One login replaces dozens of platforms. One interface replaces countless services. Messages, payments, transportation, entertainment, identity, and administration all flow through the same system. Nothing is fragmented. Nothing is separated. This level of integration produces something rare in modern technology: a complete data loop, and once a system achieves, it becomes irreplaceable. During the pandemic, this reality becomes visible. Health codes, travel permissions, and access controls appear inside WeChat. A single color on a screen determines whether a person can enter a building, take a train, or move freely. Green allows movement. Yellow restricts it. Red stops everything. There is no conversation, no explanation, and no alternative path. For most users, this does not feel like oppression. It feels like order. The system is fast, clear, and consistent. And that is the danger. Control that feels efficient does not trigger resistance. It triggers acceptance. Convenience and choice for comfort. If the experience is smooth enough, the West has simply not been allowed to build something this centralized yet. As artificial intelligence becomes integrated into daily life, WeChat evolves from a platform into a decision layer. It does not need to command behavior. It only needs to guide it, suggests routes, recommend actions, limit friction, and optimize outcomes. The user feels helped, not controlled. WeChat did not conquer society through force. It became invisible, and once technology disappears from awareness, it becomes permanent. Because leaving is no longer a technical choice, it is a social and economic rupture. The real question is not whether WeChat will expand beyond China. The real question is whether the rest of the world is slowly preparing itself for its own version, because once software becomes power, it no longer asks for permission.